Hey everyone, for this Meta Monday, we're diving into Grimmsnarl, and trust me, this deck is all about moving damage and controlling the game, then taking huge knockouts on key Pokemon with Grimmsnarl. Now, in this video, I'm going to break down the full list, the core strategy, and show you some ranked matches so you can see just how powerful and how this deck truly plays. Now, and here's the list that I've been testing. The game plan is super simple, but also incredibly strong. So you use Froslass and Munkidori throughout the entire game, especially early, to do tons of damage. Then you finish off key Pokemon with Grimmsnarl. And as for the core cards, the first one we'll talk about is Froslass. With its Freezing Shroud ability, it does damage to every Pokemon with an ability at the start of each turn. So that damage quickly goes up and allows for easy knockouts during both players' turn, and can stop your opponent from being able to get a Fez draw as well if you move the damage correctly. Now, the second most important card is Munkidori, which allows us to move the Froslass damage that's done to our Pokemon with abilities over to our opponents to take early knockouts and set up plays for our Grimmsnarl to be able to take out key Pokemon. And speaking of Grimmsnarl, that's actually our third core card, which Grimmsnarl has a high HP and does solid damage of 180, and then does 30 damage to a bench Pokemon of our choice as well, allowing us to be able to one-shot 2 prize Pokemon when we need to, and then also spread a little bit of extra damage too, so there's times where you can easily take a 4 prize turn with no problems. So together, these give the deck an edge against decks like Gardevoir, Typhlosion, and helps especially in matchups like Zoroark as well, which is more of like a 50-50, but it helps there. Now, on the list that I played is pretty standard, so there's no real text here, though I will mention I am running Shaymin, since there has been a lot more decks running around like Terrabox that do a lot of spread damage themselves, and Shaymin comes in clutch, especially against like Raging Bolt as well. So now, before we get into the games, please hit that like button and subscribe for more Meta Mondays, Rogue Thursdays, and our new series, 1 month, 1 deck, every Saturday. Now, on to game number 1. Alright, so game number 1, we see a Fan Rotom, so it is a Terra Box style deck of some sort. We have to wait until we see what it is. So there's the Ditto. This is most likely Raging Bolt. So if we look at our hand is pretty bad right now. I mean, there's quite a few things that we can do to try to get into a better hand. We at least have the Arven, so we could get like a Secret Box if we need to. We do have our Stadium as well, so that can get us a Impidimp down. We do also have access to our TM Evo, so we can actually get another Froslass set up. The Shaymin is pretty good in this matchup, specifically early game, if we see them play down a baby Raging Bolt, and it can come in clutch late game too, because generally they'll tend to try to sit behind it as a 1-prizer and try to snipe some Pokemon on our bench, so that way then they can win the game. Here we're just looking through our deck, seeing exactly what all we have left, what all we prized. We know that we prized couple key cards, but here we are just able to get the Buddy-Buddy Poffin. I'm debating about putting down the Stadium here, but I am going to do that. This is going to get me another Impidimp, so I can get that down. Now, I could bench that Shaymin, but I decide not to just yet. I don't want them to start using their bosses and stuff like that to try to get rid of the Shaymin, or give them an easy target to throw up for the active in case they want to try to lock me for a turn or two if they don't get the right hand. But seeing as they are completely set up, I really wish that I could have gotten into a Budew and just did that. But I did decide to do this play instead. That way then we can get a early Grimmsnarl down, and we also have the Froslass down to be able to start doing some damage to weaken their Fez and their Teal Mask Ogerpon. It does come in clutch against the Noctowls as well, because it does weaken them down too, and that can be an easy free prize without us even having to do any damage to it. Same thing with the Fan Rotom. So here they're actually using both of their owls for some reason, I really don't think that that was the play on their part. I think that they should have just went for like the one owl and then kept one so they could use it next turn if need be, depending on what I play. But here they are just going with the other owl, getting the stadium, and then they are able to play down another Raging Bolt, and then using the Nest Ball to find another Pokemon, just making their bench bigger. And that way, if we do play another stadium, then they can easily get rid of the owls and not have those as liabilities on their field. So they did get that teal mask just so they can get more energy down as well and see a couple more cards. And here they are going to take the knockout on the Snorunt. We are going to be able to throw the Morgrem up, and we do have a counter catcher in our hand as well. So our hand is looking really solid right here, and we actually top deck into a Munkidori, which is huge. So here we are going to sequence correctly. We are going to play down the Grimmsnarl first just to see how many energy are still left in my deck. There's 4 after I attach these 2 here. We will then counter catcher up the Fez so we can knock that out. And then we will do this research. We actually find the energy that we need. I'm thinking about playing down this Artazon, but at the same time, I don't mind him having all those Pokemon because those are liabilities that he has. So we are just going to attack here. We can throw 30 damage down. I'm thinking about throwing it down on the Raging Bolt. I could throw it down on the weaker one. He is playing these Ancient Booster Capsules, so I'm not entirely sure if that's the right play. So instead, I'm just going to throw it down onto that Fan Rotom. This does set it up so that way then we are ahead in the prize race, and right now they are in a pretty desperate situation, so they're going to have enough to knock out our Grimmsnarl, which we're already expecting that. And we were hoping to find a Night Stretcher or another way into a Grimmsnarl, so that way then we had the Rare Candy to go along with it for our Impidimp. So instead, it looks like we're most likely going to have to play a slower tempoed game where we just use a whole bunch of 1-prizers until we can get that Impidimp into a Morgrem and then into a Grimmsnarl again and go from there. So here they are going to do their attack. They are going to take 2 prizes right now on this Grimmsnarl, but we got a lot of value out of it. We were able to knock out their Fez, which means that they didn't get to draw 3 for us knocking out a Pokemon this turn. And we did set up a decent bit of damage on that Fan Rotom. So at the beginning of our turn, we should be taking a prize on that Fan Rotom as well. We are throwing the Froslass up here because we're going to attach the Air Balloon to it. So there's no reason not to just throw it up there real quick. And then we find a TM Devo, which doesn't really do anything in this matchup. It is a way to just knock out the Hoot Hoots, but at the same time, we don't really need to do that. They are just going to naturally knock themselves out soon anyway. And if we do TM Devo too early, then they won't get knocked out, and that just gives them free access to more owls. So it's very risky. Here we are just going to Iono. They're up to 9 cards in hand, but we're both at 3 prizes, so we both go down to 3. And I am going to play another Impidimp. This way, if the one that we put into the active gets knocked out, which is most likely what's going to happen, we can at least have another one to go in case we can find a way into another Grimmsnarl. Here we are just throwing damage onto one of the Noctowls, so that way then we can get another prize and try to find more ways into our Grimmsnarl to try to win the game. Right now, they are going to have to take 3 knockouts on 1-prizers, which is a little bit tedious on their part. They have only so many resources to be able to do so. Meanwhile, our whole game plan right now is basically just free. We already have the Munkidoris with energy, and then we already have the Froslass on the field that's just constantly dealing the damage. So we don't really have to invest anything into our board state to win the game. They actually do. And we actually get a Maractus here, which can come in clutch depending on if we draw into like a boss And then we have other things to, like, we need another energy to go with it. And then we could do things like boss up one of their teal masks with the Maractus and be able to retreat lock it until we can win the game. Here we do find a Budew, so there is room where we could play down this Budew. They will be able to get a knockout on it, but at the same time, we are going to be able to item lock them. So if they find their A spec, they're not going to be able to play it. And here we are just throwing more damage down on the owl. This time it's on the other one. That way then we can get a knockout on that one as well. Here we will retreat into the Budew, and then I'm debating about doing the Iono right now, but I decide I'm just going to hit with the Budew. I kind of like my hand, and I don't want to really give them extra cards depending on what they could need. And here we actually get a boss off of our prize cards, which is huge. So we now have 2 pieces of the puzzle that we need in order to do this whole locking. And there is a high chance that we can just win the game next turn, depending on what we get along with it. There also is another game plan here too. Since we have the rare candy, if we can find a Night Stretcher, we can just Night Stretcher back the Grimmsnarl rare candy into the Grimmsnarl, and then we will be able to use the boss to get the final knockout on the teal mask. Here we're both down to just a single prize card remaining, and we got to see what we draw. Here we get a Nest Ball, so not something that we could really use right now. We do see that we do have another Grimmsnarl still left in the deck, so we know that that's there. And we see that we do have the Night Stretchers, and we do have energy left in the deck too. So there's quite a few things that I could do here. We have just enough energy. There's 3 energy in the deck. So here we are just going to play down the Nest Ball. We're getting down this Iron Bundle just to thin our deck a little bit more. We are going to use it to free up another slot on our bench so we can put down this Maractus. And notably, it does get a different Pokemon into the active, so it's a little bit harder for them to get through everything. And then here we are just going to start moving some damage. We're going to throw it onto that teal mask, because if we can survive a turn, then we can just knock out that teal mask for game. So our big worry here is if they get something like a prime catcher, or they get a way to move things. They do find the prime catcher and they throw the Morgrem up. So what are they going to bring up? They bring up the baby Raging Bolt. So that's odd. They do decide to use it, and that's not going to do enough damage to the Morgrem. Instead, they aim for the Shaymin, not realizing that Shaymin turns off that baby Raging Bolt. So we actually get to win the game because of that mistake. I guess that they were just trying to go for the cheeky play, and this just shows that sometimes the cheeky play is just not the right answer. You should just go for what's going to win you. Okay, so here we see game number 2, and we see a Lily's Clefairy, so this could be a whole host of things. Then we see a Fan Rotom, so my first initial thought is, oh no, this is Terra Box. Luckily, we have Artazon, so we could actually get down a Shaymin, and then we see that it is actually Eevee Box. One of our worst matchups. So here we are going to get down the Artazon. This is going to allow us to get down a Budew right now, so we can try to item lock them a little bit, try to make it a little bit harder for them to get their engine running while we're still getting everything set up on our end. So here we will manually attach, then retreat so we can go into the Budew, and then just Itchy Pollen them and hope that they don't have a Flareon in their hand, so they can't just immediately go into that. So here they are going to take a little time thinking. They actually have the Serrano, so now we know that they are going to be able to go into a Flareon this turn, and then they're probably going to set out some more. So they actually get the Leafeon in the Terra Eevee, and they already had the Noctowl that they searched out last turn as well. So they are going to be able to get everything that they need to be able to attack this turn since they did get that Sparkling Crystal as well. And here they do just go for the attack. They are going to get the energy down for Leafeon so they can get that prepped up for next turn. That is going to be the thing that is making them win this matchup, is that Leafeon, and the fact that they are using the Terra Eevee as the basic that goes into it. So that is very smart on their end, and that makes it really difficult for us because we're going to have to do enough damage to the Flareon in the active and then deal enough damage to the Eevee in the bench without them being able to use the Leafeon when they play it. So that way then we can actually just TM Devo and then knock those out, and that's going to be our avenue of winning at this point, because we're not going to be able to do enough otherwise. So here we are just going to do this TM Evo. We are going to get down the Froslass and a Morgrem, and this is going to allow me to be able to set up doing some spread damage to try to give us that avenue that we need to actually win the game. I would have preferred to set up 2 of my Froslass this turn, but we just weren't able to. Here they do have the Crispin, so they get everything that they could possibly need to be able to have all of their plays for the Leafeon and everything. So they don't really have enough energy to be able to retreat the Flareon, and they don't need to just yet, so they're just going to keep taking knockouts with this Flareon. We are going to be forced into going into a Grimmsnarl here and just doing a decent bit of damage and hope that they don't have a energy in hand or like another Crispin to get another energy down to be able to retreat the Flareon so they can actually get the knockout with the Leafeon. So here we are just going to get another Impidimp down as well. And we will be doing this Munkidori damage, throwing it back on the Leafeon. And I was considering the Iron Bundle right here, because if we Iron Bundle, then they could actually give us the Leafeon. And if they give us the Leafeon, then this Grimmsnarl does enough damage to guarantee that a TM Devo can knock out that Terra Eevee, but we're not going to be able to knock out the Flareon, which if we can at least stop them from having a Leafeon on the field, that's what can win us the game. So here I was thinking about using the counter catcher to be able to do so, but instead I'm just going to do some damage to the Flareon and then do a little bit of residual damage to the Leafeon. Here they have the switch, so they are going to be able to take a knockout and heal a ton of damage from their bench Pokemon as well. And we just look at our discard real quick just to see exactly what's in there. So we're going to throw up our Munkidori right now. We could have just thrown up the Impidimp, but we know that if we give up another Impidimp, then we don't really have a way of winning. We are going to get down this Maractus because we do have a Dark Energy. We will be moving some damage around real quick. We want to most likely put this on that Leafeon again. And then here we are just going to bring up their Noctowl, so that way then we can just retreat lock it. And then we do have a boss's orders as well. The issue here is that we need to find another Dark Energy, so we need to find either a Dark Energy or a Night Stretcher in order to be able to start moving some damage with our Munkidori so we can actually have a shot at winning this game. And our hand is not looking too great. We do have the Arven, so we will be doing this Buddy-Buddy Poffin, which allows us to look through our deck. We see that there's a Super Rod there. We know that we have no more energy in our deck, so we need to either go Night Stretcher or Super Rod here. And we will be going for the Night Stretcher. That way then we can guarantee at least one energy attached this turn, and then next turn we can use the Arven to get a Super Rod and be able to get the energy back in deck. So if we can find a way into another Grimmsnarl, then we can actually win the game. And here they are still just retreat locked. We do also need to find another way of getting a Pokemon into their active. So they actually find a Sylveon here and they play that down. So if we can find a way to get that Sylveon to the active, then we don't have to worry about this Noctowl being knocked out and them attacking with Leafeon again. So here I do have a Buddy-Buddy Poffin. We can't get Iron Bundle with that. We can at least get Secret Box with Arven, and this can actually thin out our deck a little bit more. So we will be using that, getting rid of the Snorunt, Buddy-Buddy Poffin, and a Research, which will allow us to get the boss's orders that we need this for next turn. And then we also get the Super Rod and the Stadium. So a little bit of a mistake here. We probably should just get the Counter Catcher. So that's what we decide to do. Even though we really want that Super Rod, we know that that's what we need in order to be able to win the game. Here we are just going to get the Counter Catcher so we can actually get that Sylveon up, and then we will be just attacking. And we could have played down the Spikemuth, and that's probably what we should have done anyway, so that way then we can actually get a Morgrem down and be able to have access to that as well. But here we are just getting to prizes. They do have a Hoot Hoot down, so now we have to be a little bit wary of what they could. If they can get into another Noctowl, then they can pretty much win the game, because they all play at least one Turo in their lists for EV Box. And that's going to be the thing that could like seal the deal for them. Here we are just going to be able to move this damage. We're super close to just winning the game next turn with a TM Devo. All we have to do is just hope that they don't have a way into Noctowl. If they don't have a way into Noctowl, then we win the game next turn, because we knock out the Terra EV and then both of the regular EVs, but they top deck the Night Stretcher, which gets them into the Noctowl. So now they can get the Turo, which means they can get the Sylveon back into their hand and promote the Leafeon and then be able to attack with that, and that stops everything for us. So we lose our avenue of victory at this point. So here we are just going to promote this Munkidori. We can still TM Evo and get rid of this Leafeon, but we're not going to have enough damage to get rid of the Flareon, because that is 70 HP over there, and we're only going to be able to move a total of 50 damage. So I was just looking, counting numbers, so instead we can just throw it on the Noctowl, and then that should be, no, it's 10 damage less than what we need to be able to knock out the Hoot Hoot. So they are still going to be able to get a Hoot Hoot, but that's kind of like the only thing that we really have going for us. Now then, this is another mistake that I make here, is I should have used the boss on the Noctowl first. That way then that was stuck in the active, and that way then they have to find another way of retreating that Hoot Hoot, which could easily be done. All they need is a Crispin to get 1 energy, and then they could retreat it and be able to take the knockout for game anyway. But if you're going to do the sequence, you might as well do it correct, and that's just me counting one of our mistakes. Now then, I don't really condone what my opponent is going to do right now. He realizes that he's definitely going to win the game, so he's just playing all of the cards just to play the cards. There's no real reason for him to do so. It's just he wants to keep the game going for a little while, so he's just waiting out time and then spamming the emote and things like that. So please don't be those type of players that do this at the end of their games when they know that they're going to win. It's not really fun for anybody, and it's just kind of a waste of both players' times. But he is going to win the game here, and he's just, again, taking his time, trying to milk the clock as much as he can for no reason. And that is going to be game number 2. But here is game number 3, and this is actually a very cool deck that I came across while I was recording matches and stuff. And it's this weird, like, Trevenant style spread control deck. It's kind of like a Froslass Munkidori deck that is running the Trevenant to be able to lock down the active and then do extra damage to the active Pokemon at the same time, and then just playing that type of game style. So here, as soon as I see that that's like the game plan for my opponent, I realize that I need to treat this more as like a mirror match than anything else. So I'm just going and prioritizing exactly what I need. So I want to try to get into a Grimmsnarl as soon as possible, just to be able to knock out these early Trevenants and stuff like that, so they don't have access of that lock that they need in order to win the game. Here they do also get a Dark Energy down, and they have a Psychic on one of their soon-to-be Trevenants. They do use the Ultra Ball to find a Froslass, so they will start dealing damage. One of the big notes in the mirror match, by the way, since I had talked about it just a couple seconds ago, is if you are playing a Grimmsnarl mirror match, make sure that you don't play down Froslass. That is kind of a key thing to know in that matchup. It does take a little bit of time to realize that, and if you do watch other people that play the deck a lot more than me, they'll usually tell you the same thing, that whoever decides to play down Froslass is going to be the one that loses, because they're giving both players free spread damage, and you don't want to do that. You want to limit how much damage your opponent's Munkidoris can move around and maximize the amount that you can. So here we are having everything set up. They do finally get down a Trevenant. It is 3 energy for its attack, and it does 100 damage, so most of our Pokemon will immediately get knocked out from it as well. So there's nothing that they can really trap in our active. They will just be taking a prize. And then here they just hit us with another Iono, and we have double Snorunt in our hand, but we really don't want to do that. The most important thing here is actually the Stadium in our hand. Us having that Stadium is huge. That actually allows us to be able to go into a Grimmsnarl on our next turn, and then we will be able to use this monkey to move some damage around, and then we will have to give up its Dark Energy for the retreat. We do find another Impidimp as well. And then here with this Artazon, we're going to get down the Iron Bundle. I want to force my opponent to give me a different Pokemon from their bench, if possible, to try to force them into the Trevenant early and see if they actually fall for it. So here they're deciding what they're going to bring up. They do just bring up another Munkidori, which we're completely fine with as well, which means we don't have to worry about that tool on the back Munkidori just yet. And that means that we get to do a couple more attacks with a Grimmsnarl without having to worry about getting more energy. And the fact that our research gave us our Air Balloon is huge here. It means that we don't have to give up an energy for that either. So here we are just going straight into the Grimmsnarl, and then we are going to power it up. Now then, I can just Ultra Ball away the TM Evo and the Iono here and get down another Munkidori. And that's exactly what I'm going to do, because I haven't attached for turn yet. So now I have 3 monkeys going, and my opponent's only going to have 1. So they're not going to be able to keep up with the amount of damage that I'm going to be able to move onto their board. And that's going to be another key thing in any sort of Munkidori matchup that you could have as well with this deck, is whoever has more Munkidoris is generally going to be in a much better position because they're able to move a much larger amount of damage. And here we are just going to be able to get 2 knockouts. We want to keep them from being able to get into multiple Trevenants. They do put a Trevenant up into the active so they can start dealing some damage with its ability. And our hand is still looking really good. So we do have another boss's order, which depending on what they do, we can go down to just 1 prize card remaining next turn. And they actually bench the Phantump, so we can actually win the game next turn, all because we have this boss's orders in our hand. So here they are just getting the free draw from their Flip the Script. They are putting another tool on their Trevenant. They do put down the Gravity Mountain as well. So we're now at 290 HP, so they just need a little bit more damage to knock out our Grimmsnarl. But we're going to be able to take all 4 prizes this turn. So, well, technically the start of our opponent's turn. But it's really cool how you can do this with this deck. So here we use the boss on the Fez, getting that up because that's going to take the most amount of damage. And then we're moving damage with our Munkidoris over to the enemy's Munkidori, and then we're also going to put 30 damage onto their Phantump. That way, when we knock out the Fez, we're also knocking out the Phantump at the same time because we do enough damage for both. And then at the start of our opponent's turn, because of their Froslass that they played, we take a knockout on their Munkidori as well for game. So overall, Grimmsnarl is still a good meta deck right now. It does really well into other meta decks like Guardy and Grimmsnarl, and the only decks that you really have to watch out for is Goldango and Eevee Box. But if you're looking for a deck that's both fun and competitive, this is definitely one I highly recommend that you give a try. And if you enjoyed the breakdown, hit that like button and subscribe for more Meta Mondays, Rogue Thursdays, and my Saturday series, the 1 month 1 deck. Now then, let me know in the comments as well, would you play Grimmsnarl at your next tournament?